traveling with an electric car. Is this a big problem?
To be honest, we don't think that's a problem at all. If you keep some points in mind, today we are doing a Q&A about questions that we have been asked again and again about electric cars and about long-distance driving with an electric car. And we will answer these questions and more in this video.
And these are the questions.
Does charging always work abroad? And how is that with the Tesla Superchargers? Have you ever run out of battery? And what about the range? Many would have heard that in reality the range would be significantly less than specified, especially in winter.
If you add up the kilometer we drove around the world one time, more than 40,000 kilometers so far. On our big Tesla road trip we have traveled to 10 countries in Europe and also to North Africa, to Morocco. And of course, fully electric with our Tesla Model Y long range from 2022.
On our travels, but also at home in Switzerland, we often got into conversation with people about electric cars. And we were asked the same questions again and again. It seems as if there is still a need for information about EVs for many people.
And now straight to the first question.
Does charging always work abroad? This is of course a very broad question. What I can say is yes and no.
We have traveled to different countries and we have had positive experiences with the local public charging stations, but unfortunately also negative ones. In some countries there is a denser charging infrastructure, in others not, such in the remote areas of Morocco. Getting charged was a real challenge there.
Finally, it's working, you hear?
Some charging stations are just incredibly complicated to use, but sometimes the charging station was simply broken.
It's not working!
And with some providers, as a foreigner, it was not even possible to download the app or create a customer account without a local tax number, as we had the problem in Spain. And in the highlands of Scotland there was no reasonable solution for foreigners to use an app. But at least these chargers worked, also with a little detour.
So it's a bit different in every country.
And there isn't just one provider, then you just have to switch to another one.
We always called the helpline when we had problems. I'm in front of the charging station, I wanted to charge. And most of the time they could help us remotely and start the charger for us.
We are not friends of charging cards and we don't want to carry around a keychain full of charging tokens.
So maybe not all older charging stations come into question for us, but in our opinion the future lies in operation via app, plug and charge or simple handling with credit cards. Like we charged in England for example. Simply tap the credit card, pay contactless and charge. Like paying at the supermarket, that's simple. But before we go too far into detail we would like to talk about exactly these experiences in a future video. And now to the next question.
And how is that with the Tesla Superchargers?
Do they always work?
Since we drive a Tesla, of course, we often charge at the Tesla Superchargers. And we really charged at many different superchargers all over Europe and also in Morocco. And yes, they always worked. We really appreciate that. We could always rely on the Tesla Superchargers, also in Morocco. This is worth its weight in gold, especially when traveling and abroad. And it gives you just a relaxed feeling. Just go and get charged without any problems.
Another plus, they work in the same way in every country. Just plug in and charge. So easy.
And this is how plug and charge works. The EV automatically identifies itself to the charging network and start the charging. The EV is linked to a billing account and the amount is simply automatically debited from the credit card. We would wish that more other charging station provider and of course manufacturers of electric vehicle would also adopt this system and it would become established. In our opinion, plug and charge is the easiest of all methods.
Dear charging station provider and operator, standardization in this charging jungle would be really desirable and a major simplification for the path to electric mobility. How do you see that? What's your favorite way to charge?
And now to a question that comes up again and again.
Have you ever run out of battery? To make it short, no!
At one point it got a bit tight for us, but the reason was simply our personal decision to skip a supercharger that was calculated by the Tesla navigation system.
I really hate situations like this. Look at this.
And arrived at the next charger with only 2% range left in extreme headwinds.
It's my fault, but I think we can handle it, but this is really stressful. And we finally made it. I'm so happy. We cannot recommend that. That costs some nerves. But the Tesla has also a few kilometer reserve at zero. How much exactly? We haven't tested.
But that would be interesting for everyone to know. Do you have some experiences here?
After all, it's nothing different than with the gasoline car. At least when the fuel gauge is flashing red, you should look for a gas station. Nobody wants to be stranded with his car. And that's exactly how it is with the EVs. And the charging infrastructure is growing every day, so it becomes daily easier to find a new nearby charging station. And now to the last question.
And what about the range? Many would have heard that in reality the range would be significantly less than specified, especially in winter. We have heard this question very often.
As we drive a Tesla Model Y from 2022, we can only report on our experiences. Our Tesla has a specified range of 533 km.
And we can say it works out that way for us.
And of course, also with the gasoline car, factors as headwind, cold, winter tires, air conditioning, heating, driving uphill also have an influence. And above all, I would say sporty driving style influences the range very much. Especially at the electric car, you look much more at the range of the vehicle than with a gasoline car, but that is also a big advantage. We ourselves have become much more aware of the energy consumption of our driving style and user behavior.
So the driving style, the heating, air conditioning and so on affects the range strongly.
So you have a big influence on the range yourself.
A big and in our opinion much too underestimated advantage of the EV is the recuperation.
When it goes uphill, it goes downhill again, and if you use the recuperation responsibly, you can increase the range enormously.
Depending on the route, we were able to recover 30% of energy. We could see that very clearly, especially on routes over mountain passes, and there are many of them in Switzerland. Our Tesla indicated a calculated consumption up to the mountain top in the navigation, and for the destination, which was more than 100 km further in the flatland, only 1% additional consumption was calculated. That means we drive this 100 km almost for free, thanks to the recuperation. That would never be possible with a gasoline car. But even if it's only a little downhill or braking at traffic lights, energy is returned thanks to the recuperation. This is really fantastic. The range of our Tesla is hardly affected by cold. We tested this winter when we parked our Tesla outside for 5 weeks in the cold Swiss winter in -degrees, and it only cost 40 km of range during this time. That's almost nothing. However, we do feel the consumption of the winter tires, but that's the same with a gasoline car. And in winter you heat up the car, maybe use the one or other feature, like preheating or de-icing the windows.
Of course, all this costs energy. In our opinion, the Teslas are very efficient electric cars.
How the subject of the specified range in reality, as well as the fact of cold, is at other EVs, we can't tell firsthand.
But we have also heard a lot there.
We are absolutely convinced of electric mobility, and we are still very happy with the decision to have bought a Tesla, and we didn't have any technical problems either. And our Tesla was really not spared. Each of our 40,000 km was a lot of fun, and we are looking forward to an electric future.
What are your experiences? What questions have you been asked over and over again? Or do you have any further questions for us? Let us know in the comments below. See you in the next video.